Welcome to Second Sunday Forum on Zoom, a West Falmouth Quaker series since 2021. We acknowledge we are on Wampanoag land. Today is Sunday, November 9th, 2025, and we present Artists' Responses to Fascism that was presented at the Quaker Institute of the Future, a think tank that meets every August on Zoom. And I have made an addendum because for me, the last 3 months have been very impactful and quick. Our speaker today is Erica Adams, myself, a Quaker and an artist with a 40-year career that includes being a writer, curator, and faculty at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, or SMFA, at Tufts University from 1988 to 2015. Known myself for postmodern photography, sculpture, and recently painting exhibited in the US and Canada and in museum collections. Today's forum is being filmed, edited, and with my consent, posted on the YouTube site where our other 30-something presentations are at West Falmouth Quakers. There is a question answer period at the end, and please put your questions in the chat. We'll probably run over a little bit. We started a little bit late, and there are a lot of people here I know they all have something to say. Okay, so Artists Respond to Fascism began as a research project for myself, thinking about what I was going to do after basically 4 or 5 years of doing, for the first time, abstractions and in watercolor during the pandemic and what followed, that were really a meditative practice of talking to myself. And since I tend to be very content oriented, people picked that up, to my surprise, in the abstractions. So this began like, how do I revision working again post-pandemic and in this particular environment? So I decided to research the artists that have personally meant a lot to me rather than trying to do an overview. Again, this was a research project to try to focus how I was thinking. So it should be 1920s Germany to 2025 USA. Of course, about a year ago, we had what Trump calls a landslide victory, which in fact, since about a third of the population doesn't vote, that's really questionable. And here you see the outlay of the blue and the red states. I went to sleep thinking, who's winning? And in fact, the margin, of course, was very little, but I was very surprised by the outcome and depressed. And a few days later, I think I have a delay, on the 16th, I made this watercolor, which is small, 10 by 14 inches. And it was really me feeling surrounded by darkness and a very confused labyrinthine thing with just me as a little light in a space, trying to hold on. And I called it Still There. So I wondered, where do I go from here? And I had seen over the years and recently at Boston College, a very famous watercolor, really, oil transfer and watercolor by Paul Klee, called The New Angel, or Angelus Novus, that he made in 1920, and that the very famous, one of the two greatest Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, Walter Benjamin, described this image, which is really considered like an icon of the left. And this is what he said in his 1940 essay. And again, it was made in 1920, and he bought it in 1921. A clay painting named Angelus Novus shows an angel looking as though he is about to move away from something. He is fixedly contemplating, his eyes staring, his mouth open, his wings are spread. This is one of the pictures of the angels of history. His face is turned towards the past. Where we perceive a chain of events, he sees only one single catastrophe, which keeps piling wreckage upon wreckage and hurls itself in front of its feet. The angel would like to stay, awaken the dead, and make whole what has been smashed, but a storm is blowing from paradise. It got caught in his wings with such violence that the angel can no longer close them. The storm irresistibly propels him into the future, to which his back is turned, while the pile of debris before him grows skyward. The storm is what we call progress. Now, there were two sort of approaches in retrospect to this, and one was called an inner emigration, where the person went inward, which is what happened with me during the pandemic. And I totally relate to that, but there's also another artist that we'll talk about who did the very opposite. Okay. Ansel Keifer grew up literally and was born into the shards of World War II when everything was ash and broken stone. And this made out of lead, which is considered an alchemical transformative material, and glass and poppies. In the Israel Museum in Germany is a plane. And so it would be, after World War II, the first aerial war would be a symbol, really, of a new kind of angel or airborne entity. And let's see, I would say. So the wings of Keifer's planes are weighted down with oversized lead books, dried poppies, inserted between the pages like bookmarks, symbolizing dually death and fertility, the poppy seeds. And the Polish inscription affixed in the Warsaw exhibit said, "Silence as if sown by a poppy," endowing it with a certain tranquility. However, the heaviness of this earthbound airplane is a gray monument to history that is befitting Celan's poetry and Benjamin's catastrophic view of the past, an elegy for the dead. And in fact, I don't think he's done anything. This is a tribute to The Angel of History by Paul Klee from an earlier generation, his father's generation. But it's his sole topic for his whole life, is asking fathers what happened during the war. What did you do? And this is another one, I think, very indicative of his point of view, which is very postmodern or multifaceted. It's called Everyone Stands Under His Own Dome of Heaven, made in 1970. And he says each man has his own dome, his own perceptions, his own theories. There is no one God for all. Each man has his own, and sometimes it overlaps or intersects with another. In the early 20th century, I was very influenced over the years, and for my most recent project, by the monuments, many of which, unlike the Eiffel Tower, that we really have only in photographic form. The one I'm thinking of is by Tatlin, the monument to the Third International Moscow in St. Petersburg. And it was a proposed monument, which you see here in the center, of modern art and dynamism of the Russian Revolution and future of technology. So most, I think, cultures are ideologically driven, and this one celebrates the Eiffel Tower, the French Revolution, whereas the Italian artist Boccioni in 1913 created a futurist symbol, a modernity of the 20th century, where a person was very machine-like and all about movement and all about fluidity. So George Gross didn't have an inner immigration at all. In fact, he had the very opposite. He was very, very bitterly anti-Nazi, and he left Germany shortly before Hitler came to power because in 1932 he was offered an opportunity to teach at the Art Students League in New York. And then he returned briefly back to Germany, and then in 1933 immigrated again to the US just before January 23rd, 1933, in the same month that Hitler came to power in Berlin. And in 1938, he was a naturalized citizen. But here, basically, we have a scenario, I think, that is playing out in 2025 with the Epstein files. And we have a man that, if he's a machine, I don't know how he's connected to his feelings and his body. And he's being exploited, or we could say in both ways, it works, with a woman who is probably, putting food on the table and, like that. So not an emigration by any stretch. George Gross also famously did This Eclipse of the Sun, considered a masterpiece of political art, as signaled by the $sign, which you can see where. There it is, right up there. It's a darkening sun and a symbol of life in the $sign. And it's all about greed and violence in the Weimar Republic from 1919 to 1933, of military, politicians, and industrialists. I think we know this scenario. The painting's tilted perspective, dissonant color, and ambiguous sense of space underscore the instability of the period following World War I. And it depicts mindless bureaucrats, we're here with no head, and then the second president of the Weimar Republic and later named Adolf Hitler chancellor. And they carry weapons and whispers in Hindenburg's ear. And the donkey represents the German people standing near a bloody sword, listening with big ears and wearing blinders of ignorance, and confined and stepped on right here underneath a grate is a face of a youth juxtaposed with a skeleton in the lower right-hand corner that warns of the fate of the future generations. Now, I don't know how well we read these kind of things in our contemporary time. Here's another one, Cersei, watercolor and ink and paper, where he depicts industrialists basically like pigs, well-dressed, but underneath just pure animal, and the woman that is sexually available to the boorishly lewd men. And he made many of these in 1910 to 1920s. This is watercolor. These are small scale. Jonathan Hartfield, in fact, was put in many of the magazines in 1928, photo montages, and these are demonstrations for the revolution. And Marx is here, and Hitler is here, and others. And this one says, whoever reads bourgeois newspapers becomes deaf and blind, away with the stultifying bandages. And here we see swallows of gold and spouts of junk, Adolf Hitler. So I don't think the scenario has changed very much. And also, you'll probably recognize the allusion to classical Greek architecture that the Germans did, and we also see the East Wing starting to manifest, among other things. And the focus on perfect youthful bodies in athletic, if not militaristic, kind of positions. And these were built on the left, 1933, and on the right was 1936 Olympics. And then there's a thing called National Socialist art. And I, as an artist who doesn't work in this kind of realistic way, I always appreciate it. But I remember the National Socialists, and they only liked realistic art, of which we have an awful lot in the last 20 to 25 years. And anyway, it sends shivers up my spine when I see it, and then I have to decode it. So they had nothing but contempt, the National Socialists, for the culture of modernity, which was perceived as decadent, and rejected, these styles as un-German and a typical Jewish product. And they fought everything alien in art and promoted a moral idea of the state and culture. Where have we heard that before? In the National Socialist art, and they blamed it on the Nords. And as partly Swedish grandfather, I reject that. Okay. And then there was the Degenerate Art exhibit, organized by the Nazi regime in 1937 to show how much error these people had made, including where George Gross, Ludwig Kirchner, Paul Klee, Emil Nolde, Franz Marc, Otto Dick, Kurt Schwitters, and many foreign artists, including Pablo Picasso, Wassily Kandinsky, and Piet Mondrian. And the first three rooms were grouped thematically by those considering demeaning religion, and by Jewish artists, number 2, and 3, insulting, deemed to insult women, soldiers, and the farmers of Germany. The rest of the exhibit had no particular theme. And so here we have Paul Klee, and it's had very large eyes, a domed head, a cropped beard, and he made puppets for his son. And so the suggestion of the writer that I chose here is that he's made himself into a kind of limp puppet. And this is more from the Degenerate Art exhibit. This is Goebbels right here. I think we have our modern version. And two pictures by the expressionist painter Emil Nolde. And another thing happened, and again, a research paper is exactly that. There's no conclusion that you have that's ordinary. You let the research tell you what this conclusion is. So in 1937, the Degenerate Art exhibit focused mainly on German art and artists. However, the assault on modern art went much further. 120 artists were exhibited, approximately 1,400 artists, including Henri Matisse and other notable French modernists who were banned from German museums. And here we have The Blue Window by Matisse. And again, the Degenerate Art exhibit described Paul Klee's work as this is one, insane childish scrawling. In 1933, 54-year-old former Bauhaus professor, they threw him out, of the influential school founded in Weimar in 1919, was highly established and represented in most German museums and internationally. Yet the authorities dismissed him from his teaching position. In 1933, he returned to Switzerland. With more than 130 works of his were removed from German museums, including this one, Around the Fish. When MoMA purchased the paintings alongside André Durand, Matisse, Lambruch, Kirchner in 1939, Alfred Barr announced, "The only good thing of the exile of such fine works of art from one country is the consequent enrichment of other lands where cultural freedom still exists." Okay. So Max Ernst did this in 1937. He called it The Angel of Hearth and Home, and he retitled it the next year as The Triumph of Surrealism. Yet, shortly after the Spanish leaders supported Germany and Italy and defeated the Spanish Republicans, he despaired that a reference to the fact the surrealists, with their communist ideas, had been unable to do anything to resist fascism. Now, I'm not sure the weight of this, and that artists are maybe a little bit too narcissistic or self-focused, but it surely would be a disappointment. Here we have the liberation in 1945 of Jewish children liberated from Auschwitz. And over here on the right-hand side, from 1944, just a year before, secretly taken by a Jewish prisoner. This photograph showed who was forced to work in and around the gas chambers, prisoners' bodies being burned. Lest we forget, 1945, an atomic cloud went up over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And in 1925, it marks the anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, August 6th, 1946, 5, excuse me. And the bombings 2 days later in Hiroshima. Now here's George Gross again, but here's 1947, and the Fog has a copy of this. It's called The Painter of the Hole. So he's painting a hole. There were artists who slashed canvases. There's one on the Piggy Guggenheim. But here you see many, many versions, and then he is very literal, so he gives you a hole in a building, and that it expresses the emptiness and the disillusionment he feels with the potential of art in a world devastated by war. So there was a lot of feeling that the artists weren't successful no matter what they did. I disagree with that because I think until we speak something, we don't really know what we say. And when we speak it, then it becomes more solid, it becomes more real, and we can act from there. Giacometti did the nose, Linnaeus, in 1949, strongly influenced by tribal sculpture. The bright red tongue is an extension of the neck, the nose itself adorned with a painted spiral, maybe you can't see, follows a parallel horizon suspended in the mid-height by a thread, a decapitated head, hangs over a white plaster base, strongly delimiting the space of the cage, the pierce of the tip of the nose. The primitive aspect of the work is reinforced by the way his head is suspended, a piece of rope too long tied to a bar, simply resting on the top of a cage, from Foundation Giacometti. Ben Shahn in 1968, who was very political and had magazines about this. There's a whole public art thing that happened that I'm not even discussing in this. He wrote this one: "You have not converted a man because you silenced him." We always need to hear this. So in the 21st century, we've had a number of traumas. We see them mostly on screen, as you're seeing me today. September 11th, then we had the 2008 bank crash, and then COVID in March 2020. George Floyd was killed in public, and then January 6th, rioters outside the Capitol here shortly before Congress was evacuated. And for me and many people, January 20th was a very dark, dark day. And so we have seen since then billionaire cuts to human services by one of the richest, if not the richest man in the world. Here's Elon Musk stepping down in August in his second phase of the Doge. And the reconstruction of our greatest people's palace, if we want to call it a palace. They reconfigured the Kennedy Rose Garden on the right as a Mar-a-Lago style patio on the left. And then the proposed ballroom, which in fact is over a bunker, which replicates exactly what happened in Hitler's time, is twice the size, it would seem, of the White House itself. There was a great writer, Milan Kundera, Czech, who said dictators fear three things: artists, sex, and laughter, because they can't control them. And this comes in 1979 from his book of Laughter and Forgetting. Now, something nice really happened in 2018-19. It was the first time I think the Guggenheim had ever held over a show, because that impinges on other people's show following that. And they did it for a couple of months by the Swedish artist who demanded her work not be seen for 20 years or more after she died, because she didn't think anyone would understand it. And the writer Jennifer Higgie, who I quote here from a lot, from The Other Side, A Story of Women in Art and Spirituality, 2023 book, says, this show reflected a widespread hunger for new ways of inhabiting the planet. Spirituality, number one, which has been evacuated on the public level by galleries and museums, talking about the art that abstract artists made. And if you know anything about any of those artists, you know that their number one thing was about spirituality. And also what she did, Hilma af Klint, was, and there's a recent show at MoMA also about this. And Eleanor Hartley writes very well that indeed, at the end of the second quarter of the 21st century, a pileup of crises, social, political, environmental, and technological, seem to all but have extinguished the sense of optimism for the future that flared up periodically through the 20th century. Af Klint's mysterious, luminous abstractions offer salve to our jangled nerves, and Higgie suggests they are a stand-in for the values of feminism, environmentalism, collectivity, and spirituality, what some people call feminism. And they run current to the current fixation on money, testosterone, and power. At the ICA recently, there was a show on Shakers. And since arriving from England 250 years ago, a Christian sect of pacifists occupied a unique place in the American identities. And what they had was volumes of communal living, celibacy, shared property, and gender and racial equality, widely recognized by their simple living, architecture, music, and furniture. And so this was a residency, and this is by Gordon Hall, which just takes the back of a chair, a ladder-back chair, and shows it as probably a ladder to the sky. And what follows are people that I know personally over the last 20 some years in my teaching practice and living in Boston. I moved to Cape Cod 25 years ago and continue to commute. This is Maria Magdalena Compost Pons, who had a show at the Brooklyn Museum, 23-24 retrospective, and a very beautifully written about. She lives in Tennessee since 2015, when the School of the Museum of Fine Arts was detached after 147 years from the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and 6 months later acquired by Tufts University. In this dark time, with few transitional rituals at our disposal, Compost Pons offers a kind of priestess come to our aid. Our age suffers from symbolic and spiritual bareness. She reconnects us to ancient feminine mysteries and guides us to a world where beauty and love of living things are celebrated. She shows all humanity, regardless of time, gender, race, can access these powers. She brings peace and connection and beauty into embattled art institutions that feel starved of spirit in a way that signals a need for an update. So this is another one with her. Her father was a herbalist in Cuba. She's from Cuba. She now lives in Tennessee. And all of her work really connects to her Cuban family. This is Chandra Mendez Ortiz, married to a really lovely woman who worked at Mass College of Art. They just retired, early 50s. They're both artists. Congratulations for that. Um, and she recently did these works of her roots in Florida and her roots to family. So there's a theme here about spirituality and community and equality between genders and so forth, and genders plural. And Yuen Wu, I actually went to school with her. Chanda was one of my students. Yuen Wu made this basically a scroll. She's from Taiwan originally and recently become quite famous. And she asked Google how to walk from Boston to Taipei and spent the next 10 years turning the directions into this incredible artwork. The motivation was to visit her grandmother. And she says, I wanted the viewer to walk the distance if you were to read it. I was thinking about it as a contemporary landscape, and the scroll is very ancient form in almost like a movie in Asian culture, and also as a data structure. And then Carlota Duarte, who I've had the great pleasure of working with for at least the last 25 years, in Chiapas, Mexico, with the Mayan, teaching workshops and writing articles, curating shows, and just generally doing whatever was needed to be done. Has lived in Chiapas from 92 to 2022 and currently lives in California. And here she's also making earthbound, text-bound scrolls that roll out in time. And on the right-hand one, you can see one that folds out. So it's like a linear progression. If you could imagine moving from, say, Boston to Chiapas or California back to Cambridge, whatever, and you can only see whatever's open at the time, but closed are all these other pieces. So you never see only what's open, you see, and what you don't see is all the other different pieces that are closed for the moment in the folding. And in the bottom are all these texts. She's a sister of the Society of Sacred Heart, as well as a radical activist. And these are all sacred texts with everything one over the other, so you can't read anything. And this is earth. She collects earth wherever she goes. This is Amalia Mesa Baines. I do not know her. And her first retrospective was recently, and it was called Archaeology of Memory in El Museo de Barrio. And this is glass and LED lighting and everything but the kitchen sink to create what the river gave to me. And here, Elisa Strina, excuse me, from Italy. I've known her since she's 4 years old. She lives in the Netherlands, and she recently has made this work, My Body is a Plant. And it centers on the idea of Chinese medicine and phylotherapy to treat disorders of the nervous and digestive systems. Her brother died of lactose intolerance at a restaurant in Greece. They didn't pay attention, take it seriously. So, very beautiful work, but everything has its root. This is Yasue Mataki, who is from Tokyo. She lives in New York now, and she works originally with a lot of glass, but she finds detritus that she reconfigures and polishes and transforms, very alchemical kind of motivation. But she's also talking about the waste and the excess that she finds just outside of her door in Brooklyn. And she's currently showing in Asia somewhere. I forget the country. I think it's Malaysia. This is Marjorie Minkin, and these are what is called Lexan. It's a bulletproof plexiglass, essentially, that can't break and can be formed by heat, and she transforms it by heat and by paint. And the essential thesis is that from every single angle that you see it, it changes. And so this indicates that your change of a position in time and place, if you change it, you can change what you think and how you think about things. So in other words, there's not just one solution or one way to think, that we all have multiple points of view, and altogether they form what we call reality or truth. This is something I made called Industrial Nature Icon. It's photo etched glass. It comes from a 1986 photograph of these flat top trees that to me looked like tombstones or heads popping up out of the ground. And I used Polaroid camera to make this, a many layered process before the Polaroid. And so this is glass, steel, photo etched glass, steel, and wood. And it was responding to seeing all the shrines in Italy and thinking about how we think about nature. And then I think this is near the end of the first section. Um, Now in April, I made this one, and I approach these watercolors as you would approach meditation, or in particular, a Quaker meeting where you go and you sort of download all of the stuff and try to find calm and peace and a kind of emptiness that's full of spirit. And so this one, the title is taken from the Bread and Puppet Theater, The Possible Light Shines Through, and hear about all the different structures that were being overlaid on us in the first months of this regime. The next one has 11 slides, and I hope, yeah, we'll have plenty of time for talking, which is what I want. This is Amy Sherald, and I did the addendum because things are moving so quickly now that it was required. Amy Sherald in, I guess it was August, they said August 25th, days after she withdrew her acclaimed show, America Sublime, from the Smithsonian Institution's National Portrait Gallery, NPG, over censorship concerns. They wanted her to take out this painting that was put later on the cover of New Yorker of a trans person holding the Statue of Liberty with flowers instead of flames coming out of it. It exhibition contested this artwork, and it graces the cover, and it was August 4th, 2025. And here you have her with the wonderful portrait that she did. There's Amy Sherald there, and the portrait of Michelle Obama. And here's Michelle Barack. And then we have Kinhan Wiley, who did this wonderful portrait of President Barack Obama. Now back to Ben Shahn. In concluding, he has these flowers and flames coming out of brushes. So that's the end of the first one. And I would like to be able to figure out how I can get rid of this one on the screen.
There we go.
Okay, all right. So
Just tell me when to advance.
Okay, this is the addendum that I made in this past week. Next slide. Again, we're talking about the inner emigration. I did this August 13th, and then I started focusing on my new work. And in immigration, and again, is a socio-political context with artists and intellectuals in Nazi Germany who, while not physically in exile, were inwardly separated or alienated from the regime's ideology and cultural slogans. This is called Nightfall, and it's 10 by 14 inches. Next. Next.
Oops, wrong way.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
Okay, here we have Banksy. Everybody knows Banksy. And his work went public and it was scrubbed. And erasure is part of the dialogue, as far as I'm concerned. And this was Banksy depicting a judge attacking a protester with a gavel. Where have we seen that before? Next. And this was September 13th in Cambridge, Mass., the annual Bread and Puppet program. And here a peasant woman is crowning a puppet on the right of Trump, and on the left is a participant. Now, I think this is public response as resistance. The Bread and Puppet Theater have been doing this since '63. But to see this guy, he stole the show, walking as an audience member, it's, to me, the greatest part of democracy when people start performing their freedom of speech. Next. Okay, the best example, I think, is more like George Gross, but it's tuned for our time. That when Portland was called a war zone by Trump, I mean, we all knew better, but the manifestation of all these toy-like, cartoon-like memes where people get dressed up. I mean, this was not supported by anybody. It was something that people did as spontaneous protest and rebellion and resistance. And it was brilliant. And it's an image. We live on screens. And so this played out what Jonathan Hartfield did in magazines until he couldn't do it anymore, what George Grosz did in little watercolors when people looked at that kind of thing. And okay, next. And no King's Day, people say, oh, I don't think protest matters. In fact, it matters more than ever. And there were 18 countries that basically had demonstrations in support of what our demonstration was, the biggest protest against a sitting American president in history. 7 million people attended. So you had Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Belgium, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Ireland, UK, Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Japan. Good show. Continue next. And the other thing, I think Gavin Newsom is actually responding to this, and there are many people on Instagram where you find all your representatives and everybody else that's into conspiracy and art and everything else in between. You have Donald Trump and his own Truth Social responding the next day on the 20th of October, trolling No King's Day in his video, literally him manning a plane and shitting all over the demonstrators. So, I mean, this is a real call and response and real public art. It's not anything that we think of when we think about the dignity of the being president, but we're way beyond that. Next. Okay, more of signaling was on the 21st, the next day, and he demolished the White House without any of the protocols. And so here is the picture of the demolishment, and here is the picture of some of what was lost. We don't know if it's still lost or permanently lost. And this is what fascism uses aesthetics to achieve goals, and his aestheticization of politics. And this is what Walter Benjamin called it. It's style over substance and emotion over the regime's consequences. He may not live long enough. Okay, next. And here we also have signals from leaders that he visited. My favorite, well, actually they're both good, were the gifts that the South Korean president gave Trump a crown. So it's a dual thing because A, it's a crown and he thinks of himself, if he doesn't admit it, as a king. He acts like one. And this is a crown that is used for people who have died. So it's a funeral. And so we see the Korean president very happy with himself, and Trump, I don't think, gets it. And then June 5th, that was October 30th. June 5th, the German Chancellor Merz presented Donald Trump with a birth certificate of his German grandfather, Friedrich Trump. And it was a jab to remind Trump that he was an immigrant. Next. And then I love the Project 2029. Just fill in all the things that you think are missing in this regime that you want to see happen. And we have also the French Revolution is to build a golden ballroom while children starve and people can't afford health insurance. That's where we are right now. This is November 1st. Next. And during the George Floyd aftermath, we saw a number of monuments fell down, and mostly generals on horses, but not limited to also Christopher Columbus and the Italian North End. And these were saved, and I was really pleased to see that they were saved in a way that could be reconstructed and represented with an update. So this is Kara Walker was given actually this one. This show, Monuments, is at the Geffen Museum of Contemporary Art in California, October 23rd to May 3rd, 2024. Oh no, 2026, excuse me, typo. Monuments is tasking us to look with neither sympathy or prejudice at bronzes more shouted about than gazed upon, one critic writes. And her sculpture here, Kara Walker, Unmanned Drone, created from rearranged parts of a decommissioned equestrian statue of a Confederate General Stonewall Jackson, is a centerpiece of monuments. So, okay, next. Tim Tate we have here is an artist, activist, and a curator of the upcoming show. We hope it's upcoming traveling show, Imagining Utopia, and the founder of the Washington Glass School in DC. This is 12. I speak these two slides, and then the next two will be mine, and then I'll let him speak about his work. We'll go back to it. He says, "This is my attempt right here, the video of two men kissing right here, my attempt at reversing history's past by resurrecting photographs of known queer couples from 1850 to 1950. And he animates these older photographs into video, bringing them back to life for the lives they were meant to live." Next. And this one, like many of his works, is very interesting, but the provenance will probably outlive everything. The blood of the covenant means a covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, often interpreting to mean the bonds we choose to create with others are stronger than those we're born into. And the provenance is the mold for this piece was made at the Washington Glass School, which Tim founded and co-directs. And then it was sent to the Berengo Studios in Murano, the glass city in Venice, Italy, to be cast in lead crystal. Next, it went to the Hermitage State Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia, to be included in the Glass Dress Show, which is run by Berengo Studios every year, in the central chamber with Ai Weiwei. That's the honor of all honors, like one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. COVID came, then the war came, and the piece was misplaced from the St. Petersburg Hermitage show for several years, and then with no notice, one day it appeared back at the Washington Glass School. It will be used now to describe queer families in the upcoming show, Imagining Utopia. This piece illustrates the families queer people have frequently formed by those around them and that offer love and support through life. Next slide. And then we'll let Tim start with the questions or comments with that. These are the two works that I'm having in the show that opens next Friday. This is a sculpture. It's only part of it. It's 5 orbs that represent 5 centuries of American occupation on this land. And on the bottom is a hydrocal or a lightweight plaster sphere that I made and painted that represents in 1500 the land that we now occupy and inhabit. And the history of the future talks about how can we go into the future without knowing our history. And then on the right, a work from 1991, Pygmalion, Don't Make Me Over, also addresses the idea of roles of women and freedom and autonomy. And the show is being co-produced with the feminist futurist, 2 of which are African, one's from India, and so forth and so on. I guess I'm a Quaker futurist. Next slide and last slide. Up a little bit more, Clyde, so we can see the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Concept, no?
Whoops.
Well, I guess this is as good as it gets. So the Fall of Freedom is something that is planned by artists nationwide protest against authoritarian forces. And the Future Yearnings group that I'm in on the 22nd, a Saturday, will be participating in this. And again, it's a nationwide thing. And so can we go back to Tim Tate's work? And I'd like him to talk for a second. The next one, how's that? Or do you want the other one? This one, we'll use this one. Okay. Tim Tate from the Washington Glass School, curator of Imagining Utopia, founder of the Washington Glass School.
Hi, everybody. I actually realized I was going to speak today, but I'd be more than happy to. I've been working for many, many years on a traveling show called Imagining Utopia. And that is, what would America look like if it was a queer accepting country? And that is something we can never know, because it never has been. And I believe it will happen past my lifetime, but I'm doing my part on it. The 12 Souls, 12 Resurrections takes 12 very famous queer people of the past and the old photographs, like that is Rimbaud up there. If you want to know what Rimbaud is, there he is on the right. And I've animated them to give them those lives back. And so that was my joy. It's grown quite a bit. There's 5 of these now. I found so many photographs, I've lost track. I've told particular stories over couples in the back countries of Canada who lived quietly, unseen, and also other people as well. So there'll be 5 of those in the final show of Imagine Utopia, which, by the way, opens in Washington D.C., then goes to Miami, and then hopefully, we don't know, Asheville and New York. We're waiting to find out the finals on those. So the other one that she was showing, which was the if you go up one, that'd be great.
The next one,
Yeah.
There we
there
go.
we go.
The Blood of the Covenant. So that one was originally for the glass dress show in Venice during the Biennale. And then it was going to go to the Boca Raton Museum and then to the Hermitage. But it was, in that time, it was green with the uranium glass center. And that piece went to Boca Raton right in the beginning of March 2020. By the time it was ready to ship to the Hermitage, no one was shipping anything. COVID had hit and shut down most shipping, at least in the United States. So they, in Italy, recast this in this blue and sent it directly to the Hermitage from there. And it actually was the front cover of the museum at the Hermitage. And it was personally picked by the head curator there, saying it had to be in the show, and put me in the central chamber with Ai Weiwei. Anyway, so I think a lot of us now, we are trying our best to stop what fascism hits. Certainly trans and LGBTQ people are seriously affected by the decisions made by the politics of today. And I can't think of a better time, in one sense, to have this show happen during that. It'll open in September 2027. But I also can't think of a worse time, because my likelihood of that entire museum show being canceled is sadly high. So I live each day hoping that I can manage to get it through so that I can show that work in those 4 cities. So
Can you describe the atmosphere of art and museums in DC now, where you live?
all the museums in my city are closed outside of the Phillips. All the Smithsonian's are closed right and left. Unfortunately, there's even talk that the African American Museum, the Women's Museum, and there's another one that may never open, because they are going to choose who they're going to open. And in fact, sadly, one of the largest collectors of glass, which has 12 of my pieces, is now on the board of the Kennedy Center and on the board of the people deciding how to edit the Smithsonian, including saying that the slave ships in the African American Museum in the basement are just too depressing. It'll change everything here in DC. God knows what'll happen. The attendance at the Kennedy Center is down to 14% of what it used to be. That'll give you an idea of what happens when these cultural events are taken over by the government. And I expect that it's going to be the same way for most of the shows coming. I don't know how many of those will open. Some of them, this delay will be so challenging that they will close. They will have to close because of the financial loss that they're all receiving. So here, it's a seriously depressing city. People on my way to work 3 miles from my house, I passed 3 ice stop sites. My husband is on a committee at a local elementary school that has to go up there every day when the kids are let out, because they were following kids to brown kids to their parents' cars and arresting the parents and the kid. So now he's up there with megaphones trying to stop the. I can't even go into all the difficulties here. We are militarized on almost every corner, but they have nothing to do because we're not the war zone they said we were. And when we talk to these National Guard that are there, their biggest concern is we did not sign up to turn our weapons on our families and friends in this country and neighbors. So they're equally upset. So I'm not sure why this keeps happening, why they keep sending more and more people. All the ICE people have their faces covered because they were all the people here during the insurrection of the Capitol. And so that fear of being able to show means now, unfortunately, in this city, people in masks with SUVs and having their faces covered are now just abducting, especially women, and taking them and raping them, throwing them out, because people are allowing it to happen in front of them because they assume that these are official powers, because there's nothing that says ICE. They just have, it says on their back police that they bought on eBay. And then the cars aren't marked, so no one knows who these people are. They're running around in hoodies and masks and just taking people, and they just disappear. They take your cell phone, they take your wallet, they never return it. So you have no way of contacting your family to tell you why they don't see you anymore. So now when people are tackled here, the first thing they try to scream, people say, send us your phone number, tell us your phone number, because then at least they can call your loved one to tell you what's happened. Because otherwise, a month or so comes by and you call and you're in some other country. It's a very challenging place to live right now. Artists are doing their absolute best. Half the artists I know are spending their time just making posters to carry at the protest. It's a different world. I didn't mean to talk on this, and I didn't mean to talk so long. So I'll send this back to you, Erica. I didn't want to get too
Well,
depressed
we
about
needed
it.
to hear that, and that's why I asked you to speak. Okay, questions? Anybody have questions now?
I put a question in the chat.
Ah,
I can't see it.
Is it-
From Trudy.
Yes.
The question is, writers have also been targeted right now with banned books and attacks on journalists. Would love to hear comments about that.
I think we have a journalist in the audience. John, did your sister make it? Unmute. This is a lesson of the pandemic.
I don't know if she's
I'm here.
oh, she is
Okay.
here.
Okay, I could even start my video. Okay, there. Okay, it's a fantastic presentation, Erica. Really powerful and really inspiring to see all those gorgeous works of art throughout, and also have a historical perspective on this. And it's absolutely true that journalists are, particularly journalists who are foreigners, have been stopped at protests. There've been journalists who've been pepper sprayed. There was a woman from WGN in Chicago, who was thrown to the ground and pepper sprayed. So journalists are absolutely under attack as well. Although, as Tim points out, we who are US citizens, we who are white people, are not as much under attack as brown people. Although it's very disheartening to hear about the what's going on with artists' shows being canceled. There was a really good piece on 60 Minutes recently with the artist who did the Michelle Obama.
Amy Sherald.
Yeah, did people see that? That was very powerful. So, and 60 Minutes, ironically, was under attack by Trump. So it was good to see them still fighting back, even though CBS News, there's been a lot of capitulation by media executives and newspapers, like the owner of Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post. So it's a big problem with whoever owns these forms of communication are capitulating to Trump, while the little people, the journalists who work under them, are trying to fight back.
And you're a specialist, a prize-winning journalist and author on the border. Can you speak to that?
Well, yes, absolutely. What's going on the border is just, because I was saying earlier today at Quaker meeting, these protests against ICE are now happening all over the country. So what used to be just focused on the border is now gone nationwide. I understand that they are trying to replace that ICE. There's some issues with the ICE officers not being as tough as they want them to be, so they're trying to replace them with Border Patrol. Although legally speaking, the Border Patrol is only supposed to operate on the borders, and ICE is supposed to operate internally, except for the idea of what the border is so expanded that it's within 100 miles of any US border, which is pretty much every large city in the country. So this is happening all over the country, and it's really important that artists are standing up and fighting this, and that shows like this are really reaching as many people as possible.
And we also, thank you. We also have a scientist here, Gary Bauer. I don't know if he has anything to say about science and how science is being affected by this. And there were a number of artists. I don't know the questions. Somebody just sort of raise your hand or speak up. Most
would-
people,
I would like to say there is a small act of defiance, at least. While Amy Sherrill was voluntarily pulled herself from the Smithsonian after censorship, she got a show at the Baltimore Museum of Art, and the High Museum will take those shows. So this small amount of resistance, at their own danger and own peril, I'm sure, for their own funding, took those shows on, saying we will not buckle to that. So there are bright spots out there. They're just very few.
it's for me that the takeaway is that yes, you can be inner immigration artist, abstract and focus on your daily life, because that's exactly what fascism takes from us. It takes that private life from us. And so our act of resistance is whatever our field is, to continue in that field in every way. And we all have different personalities. And I think it's on my phone somewhere. I read this really great thing, and I'm not sure who it's from. And it says, oh, and today, Tim told me, is the anniversary of the Kristallnacht in Germany, in November
1938.
9th to 10th, 1938. Some are posting on social media, some are protesting in the streets, some are donating silently, some are educating themselves, some are having tough conversations with friends and family. A revolution has many layers. Be kind to yourself, because this is a regime of cruelty, and to others who are traveling in the same direction. Often we in the left, and especially Cambridge, I know so well, it's like we're splitting hairs. We might as well be counting angels sometimes. So this is really good advice. And just keep your foot on the gas. I thought that was brilliant. So I learn a lot every day on Instagram, from the conspiracy theorists, from the representatives of every kind of branch of government that we have, from individuals that feel so led to say whatever on Instagram in particular, and I know there are other platforms. So we have a lot of power, we have a lot of connectivity that I don't think that they certainly had in Germany. There was no internet. I mean, phones didn't work as well. Not everyone had them. And we're very educated. We have the power, we have the intelligence, and there's a problem of disconnect and the isolation that our culture is very good at fostering with our very independent way of being. And by the way, Tim, after George Floyd was killed, my brother lived in that neighborhood, and he his friends were on, and they had noticed that people, the out-of-state plates, were doing all the fomenting of violence. And it was St. Paul, not Minneapolis, that actually arrested 99 people that day and the next day. And they said, yes, they were all from out of state. They were all funded. So everything that he projects is what he's actually doing. And who was it who wanted to speak? Unmute yourself, John Davison. Unmute yourself, hon.
Yeah. Hi, I just have one very brief comment, and that is that I liked the artistic presentation and agree with what's been said, but I would just point out as a point of reference that if you look at what happened in Nazi Germany, that hasn't happened here yet. Trump got 30% of the people, of the potential electorate. We still have 30%. That means 40% haven't made up their minds. So unlike some people like, Masha Gessen, who keeps saying our country is looking like Putinist Russia, I would say not yet, not quite so fast, because 40% are still undecided. 30% of us want Trump gone. 30% voted for him. So I would say that the analogy is more like 1775, the first year of the American Revolution, when 1/3 wanted independence, 1/3 didn't, and 1/3 hadn't made up their minds. So I'm just pointing out that we're not quite at Putinist Russia levels yet. You're still free as an artist to make your art. You're still free as a journalist to say your piece. You just have, obviously, the things Trump has done are very frightening, and I don't endorse them in any way. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in.
Very good viewpoint.
I would definitely say in DC, we're sadly ahead of most people in the sense of how we're being oppressed. Plus, we're a 94% Democratic town, so we don't feel that 30% anywhere, we feel like we're under total attack. So, and I try to tell this to people, and they show a little bit out in other cities, but very few cities are going under the horrible attacks that we feel on a hourly basis, not even daily, hourly. There's different ones all the time. So it's hard. I do hear your point. It just feels like we're 1938. This is 1938 was Kristallnacht, and here we are today. It feels today like there's no difference in DC. Now that hasn't gone to the whole populace yet. I hope it just stays here if it has to be anywhere. If it stays here, then that's going to be much better. But when you're here, it feels so horribly different when you're stopped on the street and asked to show ID, which we are, things like that.
Okay. I think at 250 years, when most empires die or exhibit areas of death that may take hundreds of years to follow, we have a great opportunity to reconfigure for the future our democracy. And I think everybody, from whatever you do in life, has a power. Any other questions? I know we started late and then there were those wonderful technical difficulties I had.
We have a couple of comments on chat.
I can't see them.
Yeah, it says, I'm an adjunct professor in architecture in Boston. I'm not comfortable speaking about my views. Another comment from the same person says, David Byrne, the genius of music, has a song where he uses T-shirts to give his view. He begins with Make America Gay Again.
Thank you. I'm getting that shirt. I'm getting that shirt, David.
On that point, I didn't wear my Siempre Antifascista T-shirt today with the four-headed lion. I thought it was too out there. Well, if there's nobody else that wants to say anything.
Is there any plan for we people who have power because we've had experience in the arts to do something? I loved your talk, Erica. It was such a beautiful talk, and it gave me so much inspiration.
Oh, good.
But I don't know where.
Well,
where to go
on
with
that
it.
Saturday, we're doing, I had a typo. It's the Fall of Freedom is on the 21st and 22nd. At the Piano Craft Gallery, we're organizing something for the 22nd, which is a Saturday after the opening. It's a very short show, but you could show up there. And also, I think if you go online, Fall of Freedom, you'll find all kinds of things that you could do something similar. And on the point, because when I was teaching, I noticed over the years, some of the faculty, including one who had to leave South Africa as a white Jewish man, who was working in the anti-apartheid movement and taught at Harvard, taught at the museum school, told me one day straight out, oh, well, no, I don't ever talk anything about politics to any of my students. I thought, oh, we're in deep territory. And that was well over 10 or 15 years ago. So this is something that's been building for many, many years. And I can only imagine, in fact, I don't have to imagine what it's like teaching now. Yeah.
Well, I do. I always let a little leak out around the edges because I don't want to talk about it directly, but I can't not.
History is very important.
Yeah, it really is.
It's major.
Yeah.
So thank you for everybody who showed up and how you showed up. And
I just put in the chat a quote from Gramsci. The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters.
and that it is.
So thank you for being such great artists.
Thank you for showing up. Showing up is 90% of everything. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody. It was great to get the perspective.
Hey, you made it from Greenland. Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.